Colors, where we look back at all the heel turns that took place back in the day, some iconic and some overlooked throughout wrestling history. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's go back in time.
What's good? What's good? What's good? Hello, all, and well, I feel like I'm loud. I'm just blaring in your ears. Hello, all, and welcome to True Colors. I'm Isaiah Jackson Jr. Of course, joined alongside me is usually the man, the myth, the legend, Devin Lee Crimes. Of course, he is on a top secret mission. When Devin is away, we're just going to say he's on a super secret, of course, investigative mission for the heel turn. He's getting the scoop on all the newer news that's out there in the world. Devin's hooking us up. Devin is getting us right. And Devin is making sure that not only do we have great content, but he's also making sure that we sound, look, and feel amazing on a daily basis. And he does that just by showing up. Of course, we always got to glaze Devin when he's here, when he's not here. And then when he is here, we got to pretty much just beat him down, all the way down, brother. But in actuality, look, my man's on a mission. He's just completely busy right now. So he gave me permission to give me the keys and to just run with it until his return, which is going to be really soon. It's not like he's going to be gone for a really, really long time. Outside of that, True Colors is something that Devin and I wanted to do for a while. This was supposed to be like a podcast story series where we get audio clips and we pretty much cut them up. But the thing is, even though I took a class on fair use and the laws of pretty much content creation and the do's and don'ts, still suck at it. And it's still working to get better on it. So instead of making it just a podcast style, we're just making it talking. We're just making it free form, where we just pretty much go on and share just the fun memories that we had from this ultimate rivalry that was Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio, dating all the way back to before me and Devin was even born, over to 1997. Yes, we're 1998. We're babies, So back in 1997, when Eddie Guerrero took on Rey Mysterio, of course, in Halloween Havoc, and this is when both guys are pretty much have one foot out of the door and WCW, and a lot of people, still put this down as one of the greatest matches in WCW history and even in cruiserweight history as well, just looking back at it. And I see it as one of the Rey Mysterio's cleanest outfits. And we're going to be honest here, like that was just, it was raw. Like it was just absolutely fire. Just looking at the graphic right here, they put the work in. Like the match itself was so fire, so hard hitting. And even if you watch the Untold, and me and Devin did the homework, we made sure that at first I was going to go into this dry, just going off memory, but I didn't want to have to, maybe my memory serves me right and I have to go through and research. And I'd rather just go back, watch it all, and then pretty much, give you a quick synopsis and then my thoughts on it all, and going back and also share my opinions on it. So even looking back at this match itself, both guys having one foot out the door, this was just fire on all cylinders, just hard hitting, fast pace, and of course Rey Mysterio just soaring through the sky, and of course Eddie Guerrero doing the same. Rey Mysterio even talking about this, saying that he knew this match was going to be fire, especially knowing that Eddie Guerrero was, as a teenager, fighting the Rey Mysterio Senior, quote unquote, pretty much his uncle. And so this was just so fire going back and watching this match. Of course, seeing Eddie Guerrero having Rey Mysterio on his arms, Rey Mysterio, switching it out into a Hurricane Rana, rolls him up for the 3 count with his mask pretty much tore up because Eddie Guerrero was pretty much tearing at the mask. It's supposed to be a mask. His mask was on the line for this match. And so Rey Mysterio getting his mask pretty much just ripped to shreds, and we're going to get into that a whole lot later as well. But seeing just both of these guys go back and forth was just so much fun, and it also pretty much laid the foundation to what we were going to get, when it was all said and done, just pretty much giving us a glimpse into the future, as they make their way into WWE. Now, of course, Eddie Guerrero comes in. Now, before I get into the nitty gritty of their tenure in WWE. I got to get into the nitty gritty of Eddie Guerrero's just 5 for 5 hot streak of theme musics. Just come through Latino Heat, and then of course Latino Heat. Every theme song he had was fire. Then of course you have I lie, I cheat, I steal. Of course that as well. Moving over to the oh man, I'm sorry. But when Eddie Guerrero turned heel, as we go into the future, as we're looking into the future, Eddie Guerrero turns heel. You hear the cell phone ring. Can you feel the heat? Oh my goodness! Like you knew Rey Mysterio was finna get beat down. Like let's be honest here. Like as much as we love Rey Mysterio, because Rey Mysterio is the sympathetic baby face. He's the guy that we root for. Eddie Guerrero was giving this dude the beats not even by Dre. It was by Eddie Guerrero himself. Eddie Guerrero was beating this dude down, beating him down, and yet. As we still, fast forward as well, Rey Mysterio was still getting the wins. As we took a look at this Halloween Havoc 97 match here, Rey Mysterio picks up the victory over Eddie Guerrero. Now, of course, fast forward, Eddie Guerrero makes his way into WWE. Rey Mysterio finds his way there in 2002, and they're a part of the SmackDown 6. Now, I remember the SmackDown 4. Now, I believe the SmackDown 4 out of the 6 was Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Kurt Angle, Edge. I want to say Chris Benoit, but I could be completely wrong. And there was a 6 guy as well, but there was 6 guys that Paul Heyman had their faith in that SmackDown roster that you saw a lot of that got the opportunity, and of course they were the guys that pretty much held the baton, for WWE and for SmackDown themselves, which leads us to Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero partnering, and of course their partnership starting, and that was a whole lot of fun in itself. Of course, nothing to take away from Los Guerreros. Of course, the uncle-nephew pairing of Eddie Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero as well, which also led to an amazing feud after the passing of Eddie Guerrero between Chavo and Rey, outside of the leg injury that Rey Mysterio suffered. But it was just so awesome just to see the back and forth between not only Eddie and Chavo, but then to also see Eddie and Rey, share that same chemistry, and for them to go on a blockbuster run. And what a lot of people don't realize is that run was so freaking short. The Eddie Guerrero Rey Mysterio run was so freaking short. And as a kid, it felt like it was like a time, like it felt like it was forever. It felt like they were champions for months. And it was so fun to watch. Like it was nothing to take away from the talent that was there either, but it was so fun to see Eddie Guerrero and to see Rey Mysterio as a tag team, and I thought that their tenure was for much, much, much longer. But of course, February 2005, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero challenged the Basham brothers. Of course, if you don't remember, that was Doug and Danny Basham. Had to pretty much jog that back in my memory. But Doug and Danny Basham, of course, took on Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio in February in 2005. And of course, as the story has said, Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio did get the victory. And although I don't remember it being such a fun classic match, I watched it again. I don't remember it being just a fun classic barn burner of a match. It was entertaining, but it wasn't nothing that I'm gonna go back and watch again. Let me zoom into this. Jesus Christ, I say, oh, okay, no, zoom in that far. Okay, geez, just like help yourself out a little bit. Okay, they're gonna be a little blurry, but that's cool. But in No Way Out, in February in 2005, Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio wins the tag team championships. And look, with that, and by the way, also just a quick side note as well, those tag team championships, I like that style a whole lot more than I like the Raw style. And I'm talking about in those forms because, of course, you had the Raw and SmackDown tag team titles. I always wanted, when you saw the Walmart $9.99, and when they were $9.99, now they're like $29.99, but when they were $9.99, the title belts on the shelf, me and my brother had to get them, even though my brother wasn't really a huge wrestling fan, but had to get the SmackDown titles. He loved the Raw titles because he was a weirdo. So, outside of that, outside of the small tangents that I'm going to be going through here, because like I said, we're just going to be jogging you guys memories as well, and we're going to just be shooting the stuff as we go about this whole thing. So Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero winning the tag team titles, at least for me, I was over the moon. Like, this was just an amazing tandem, you know, and it was perfect. You know, Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, just the thought of, not even the thought, the image of them in the car, you know, in Eddie's pretty much car with the hydraulics, Rey Mysterio's little self, you know, just bouncing all over the place, and Eddie Guerrero, and it was just so cool to what, like, you remember the fun day? That was good times, you know, the glory days of wrestling. You know, I thought that was just pretty much my prime, you know, in terms of just tag team wrestling, because I was a fan of Eminem. You know, I wasn't really a huge fan of the Basham brothers. Looking at them now, I see them as really, really good wrestlers. You know, they can definitely be like really, really solid, annoying heels, you know, coming up to the not necessarily NXT, but I could see them at Raw and nowadays, if I can put them in a roster right now. But there was a prime, you know, there was a fun time where, hell, even you can go into, as we're getting to a little earlier on, you got Hardcore Holly when he was teaming up. He teamed up with RVD for a split second. Then, of course, they had their back and forth where Bob Holly crashed to the table. Then his tail, the back started bleeding. Don't try this at home. You know, you've seen the clip. But it was just a fun time where you got a mix of tag teams. Of course, I brought up Los Guerreros as well, Edge and Christian, the Hardys, the Dudleys, you know, prime. And so when you're seeing all this fare for Eddie and Rey, you're thinking that this is going to last a long while. And then Eddie starts hating. Now, one clip that I totally forgot about that just completely jogged my memory. I forgot if it was the A&E special or if it was the WWE Untold. But Eddie Guerrero and Rey, they're talking backstage, and Eddie is pretty much pitching the idea to Rey, like, hey, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, WrestleMania. And they're like laughing, you know, and Rey Mysterio's like, what? You know, one of you won. And Eddie's like, yeah, you know, like, just, oh, you know, who would have thought, you know, I'm just playing around, you know. But I'm actually serious, though. You know, like, he just turns around, looks at Rey. I'm actually serious, though. You know, and the camera zooms in really nice. You know, it's just like, it was just a perfect segue into just like Eddie Guerrero was like, man, I think I'm better than you. You know, like, and that just eats at Eddie. And from the moment that backstage segment happens, you see just like something go off in Eddie Guerrero, because even in the WrestleMania 21 match, which by far is one of my favorite WrestleMania matches of all time, you see Eddie Guerrero getting aggressive with Rey Mysterio, getting angry at himself. What do I got to do to put this dude over? You know, like, I'm better than this man. What do I have to do to put this man away? And yet Rey Mysterio, just like in Halloween Havoc 97, except it wasn't off the top rope, hits him with the Hurricane Rana, rolls him up, hits him with the pin, and they shake hands. It takes Eddie a minute, you know, it takes Eddie a minute, but they shake hands, and it was just so cool to see the seeds planted, you know, for the boys. And as a kid, you can already tell, like, I don't really trust Eddie. You know, like, I was so innocent when just watching this. I'm just like, I don't really trust Eddie. You know, like, there's something going on with Eddie Guerrero here, you know, like, just being so dumb, you know, just being clueless to the industry, just being so clueless to the business. Then, you know, I don't know. I think something's going on with Eddie. I don't think we should try. He's kind of scaring me a little bit, you know, like, I'm over here just kind of freaking out about what Eddie Guerrero's finna do to our boy Rey Mysterio. And hold up, huge shout out to Get Yo. What's good? What's good, my brother? Just reliving, of course, Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio's rivalry. Right now, we're at WrestleMania 21. We just got through Rey Mysterio, not necessarily beating the brakes off of Eddie Guerrero, because Rey Mysterio got the brakes beat off him, but until he came through with the win. Huge shout out. Look, we don't hate on YouTube creators. We do shout them out if we don't, you know, if we like them. So one person that I do watch religiously is Brian Zane. And Brian Zane, he does the Wrestling with Regret. You know, he does the pay-per-view reviews. And one thing that he also like pointed at was Rey Mysterio fixing his mask that whole time. And once he brought it up, you can't unsee it. Like every move Rey Mysterio does is like Rey Mysterio just bounces off the ropes, clothesline by Eddie Guerrero. I swear. I mean, I wish Devin was here with his Deadpool mask. You know, he looked like Devin in here. You know, like it was just every time Rey Mysterio did just the slightest move, just ooh, 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 ooh. Ooh, but hey, look, give it up to Rey Mysterio. He did that with, I think he only had like maybe one botch. I think it was like maybe a botch or two, you know, in that match. But it was just so fun. You know, this show, and shout out to Get Show. Yep, the the mask was loose, hella loose. And that wasn't the only time, you know, we see Rey Mysterio's mask, you know, being loose in a lot of these matches. And with Rey Mysterio here, and he's barely slipping up. So, you know, that just, you know, you got to give it up to his professionalism. But then again, there is one thing to Rey Mysterio where he does do, you know, rope moves, but it's not to the point where you see the guys like in AAA where they're pretty much walking on ropes and then they have to jump on the second, jump on the third, jump on the second, jump on the top, and then do a backflip. No. Rey Mysterio might hit you with a what's it called? Arabic press, the move that Sami Zayn does off the ropes as well. And a huge shout out to Get Yo. Ray keeps fixing himself like a girl on the Tinder date. I'm telling you, man. Look, Ray has a serious problem. He just got a serious problem touching himself. And at least it's on the upper, at least it's upper above the neck area. So we got to give it up to Ray there. And a huge shout out. And look, can I share this with you guys? Because Devin thought I was crazy when I said this. And since I'm here, and since I can explain this a little bit, I want to know if this was just me. I live with a family of 6. This family of 6 have cousins that, what, I believe is 3, 4. So we have 4 cousins, intermediate cousins. So in total, what? It's 10 of us. So there's 10 of us at the grandparents' house that watch wrestling. You know, of course, a lot of people get old, they stop watching it. But one of us found out that there was a conspiracy that Rey Mysterio, after his knee injury from Chavo Guerrero, if you remember Rey Mysterio, the I Quit match between him and Chavo, I quit. He's getting pretty much, he's dangling from, I believe it was like a stage set up, the barricade. It was something, whatever Jeff Hardy will be climbing on, something that Jeff Hardy would jump off of, you know. But Rey Mysterio is pretty much just dangling from there. I quit, and then we don't see him for like a year and 6 months. There was a conspiracy that when he came back, that wasn't Rey Mysterio, that was his cousin. You know, like it was just Rey Mysterio's cousin. They just had different tattoos. You know, like they had to get the same tattoos that the actual Rey Mysterio had. Did anybody else hear that conspiracy? That wasn't Rey Mysterio, that it was just like his cousin that was just portraying the Rey Mysterio character? Because like I heard that when he debuted, when he came back. And I was like, I don't know, because he wasn't jumping anymore. He wasn't jumping from the stage. You know, he wasn't jumping from underneath the stage. He was just coming out there. You know, like looking like Lita out there. You know, like come on now, like brother. Like it was like I needed some confirmation. Did anybody else hear that rumor? And I'm gonna cut this clip. And I need somebody to confirm this for me, unless I'm crazy. Now, if nobody else heard this, I'm just a psychopath. Or not even me. I'm not even a psychopath. I'm just gonna blame one of the 10 relatives, siblings, cousins that I have in the family. So. Just wanted to throw that out there. I know this is an Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio rivalry story time type of deal, but look, like I said, we're going based off memory too. It was named Mysterio. Look, I'm telling you, it was named Mysterio. Hutaka. Like it was like, come on now, bro. Come on, like it's just legit here. I gotta have you on the next one. If Devin isn't on here, Get Y'all, I gotta have you on the next one, brother. Because I'm gonna slide out here in about like 10 minutes. But like it was just so cool seeing Rey Mysterio come back. He wasn't jumping anymore, and they're like, bro, that's his cousin. I'm like, that's his cousin. I'm like, what? And then who's his cousin? I'm like, then where's Rey Mysterio? I'm like, what's happening here? Like, I'm like, this ain't making any sense. And so like it was just so cool. it was just so cool. Huge shout out to Get Yo Just, man, and subscribe to Get Yo as well. They have amazing content. And one thing I do love, if I can glaze for a minute with an extra pause though, but if I could just glaze for a minute, Get Yo. Not only just, but the channel itself is so fun to watch because they are so unique. And what I mean by unique is that they are so, what's the word? I had the word on top, and it's another word for just creative. Everything is just organic. There it goes. Everything is organic. Everything that they've done is in terms of drafts, in terms of just everything that they've done, music, foods, wrestlers in terms of foodies, the impressions, everything that they've done on the channel is just fun to watch. It's entertaining and it's organic. It's true to them and it's fun. So huge shout out to them because you can't get that anywhere else. All of us are going to review and talk about wrestling. All of us are going to go on and talk about our favorite wrestlers and talk about the story times and all that. They're going to get you something that you probably haven't seen on any other channel. So definitely subscribe to them. Had to blaze for a little bit because I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, man, they talk about anything and everything. And how the hell do they be thinking, let me, I got to go to Michigan with y'all. Let me just be like, if I could just say that without, if I can say that without saying that, I got to go to Michigan, with y'all, with y'all mindset, so huge shout out to the Get Yo boys as well. Just have to throw the love out there. Huge shout out, yo, you a real homie. Much appreciate to you guys. 10,000 or 1,000%. I think that's 10,000%. Yeah, I got look, my zeros ain't right. But a huge shout out to you, brother. Appreciate you so much. But the tag team division there was so cold. And like I said, that's the thing about this. Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero's tenure was so short because even when I was going about reviewing this, like I believe this was 2 years ago when me and Devin had this idea, because even in the intro, the lady's voice, huge shout out to Kylan Talley in Indianapolis. She recorded that 3 years ago. We used it 2 years ago, and now we officially are doing a show 2 years, it took 2 years, and it was 2 years in the making, 3 years in the making, honestly. But when you're looking at this tenure, this was a 3-year run from them coming to WWE, from them tag teaming in 2005, breaking up they got together early 2020, not 2025, 2005, excuse me. They got together in early 2005, broke up mid 2005, feud kind of ended early on, and then of course, unfortunately, Eddie Guerrero, we see the unfortunate passing. I believe that was in 2006, though. Eddie Guerrero passed in 2006. Oh, no. Eddie Guerrero passed November 13, 2005. So, yeah, Eddie Guerrero passed 2005. This whole thing. And then, of course, he gets with Dave Bautista as well. And it shows his true colors as well. We're going to get into that in a minute, too. We're going to get into that might be its own show sometime later on this week. We might just have a Eddie Guerrero tribute, this week. But it was just so fun. I'm sorry I'm all over the place, but I'm having so much fun talking about this. This is bringing back so much memories. But outside of all this, Eddie Guerrero is just such a short time. And he did such great work in this. And a lot of people fail to realize that, of course, story has it, at least behind the scenes. And this was even said by Batista himself, who was going back and forth with Eddie Guerrero when he passed, before, and of course, around his passing. Batista was supposed to drop the belt to Eddie Guerrero, was supposed to drop the world heavyweight title to Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero had the WWE championship after he beat Brock Lesnar, and I believe that was No Way Out 04. And then he dropped it because, of course, rumor has it, speculation has it, that he was just a lot of pressure on Eddie Guerrero. Of course, gates were going down, and the belt was put on JBL. And we talked about that too, about how much of a shift that was. Me and Devin had a long talk about how much of a paradigm shift that was. If Eddie Guerrero didn't drop the belt, if Eddie Guerrero wants to hold the belt long term, we get a long, healthy Eddie Guerrero run. How fun, how creative that would have been. Instead, we get JBL. And as a young kid, we think JBL is just so boring. We thought, oh my goodness, JBL had that title for almost a year, and it was just boring. Oh, like watching him win just made you sick to your stomach. I believe 2005, I was like 7 going on 8. Sick to my stomach watching that man win until the hero John Cena came through. But just imagine, and him and Eddie and JBL had some great matches as well. But just imagine the great work Eddie Guerrero would have done with that title. But instead, Eddie Guerrero drops the belt to JBL, and we were supposed to get another title run. We were supposed to get another go around with Eddie Guerrero because of just the great heel work he's done. And let's get to that heel work, because after Rey Mysterio beats Eddie Guerrero at WrestleMania 21, Rey Mysterio, of course, he's perfectly fine. He's living life like nothing's happening. Like, hey, no hard feelings. Everything's all good. Hey, man, everything all good, homie. Eddie Guerrero, it's like he's walking around with a twitch. It's like before we had bald-headed Randy, we had Eddie Guerrero. We had like 05 Eddie Guerrero, cell phone ringing Eddie Guerrero. Can you feel that? We had that Eddie Guerrero. This sent chills down your neck. Oh my God, somebody finna get their mask ripped off. It's just like he was a demon. And so, like, when Rey Mysterio is walking around like everything's perfectly fine, Eddie Guerrero is walking around with like a twitch. It's just like, yeah, we winning these matches. We're, we keep retaining these tag titles, but this dude over here think he better than me. It's just like he just has this look within him, and of course, there's this beef brewing. And of course, when Rey Mysterio needs help at a point in time, Eddie Guerrero just isn't showing up. Eddie Guerrero just isn't coming around, or Eddie Guerrero's late to the party when Eminem is coming through and just jumping these guys. And for those people that don't know Eminem, if I'm not explaining them, of course, that's Joey Mercury and Johnny Nitro. Of course, Johnny Nitro, John Morrison, Johnny Raw, Johnny Suma, whatever you want to call him. It's like whatever you want to call that man. That's who he is. And honestly, I love them as a tag team too. And can't forget about Melina. Can't forget about Melina. For those that know, look, the entrance, oh my goodness. We can't forget about the entrance. Look, I was, as I mentioned before, 7, 8 years old. Having to, as soon as she come through, I had to look up at my grandma. It's just like, hey, look, I'm sorry, but you're giving me permission to watch this. It's just like, I'm sorry. But after going through Eminem was just such a talented tag team. I thought their finishing move was sickening because you pretty much had a guy on top. They pretty much had a guy over their shoulder. Johnny Nitro or Joey Mercury were pretty much cradle the guy's head in like a DDT fashion. They just drop him on his head. Bloop. They would just drop him on his head with the quickness. A huge shout out to Get Show. Even though Eddie didn't have the title, he was still in position as a main event player. That's 100% fact. And he said correct. Eminem with the slow intro, with the slow-mo intro. Oh my goodness. The red carpet. Of course, the pictures, and then Melina came through. It was like then Melina got in the ring, And for those that, oh my goodness, and look, we can go through rumors as well. You guys, please feel free to debunk these rumors. And if anybody thinks I'm tweaking, I'll happily come through and research, go on the deep dark web, and see if anybody else saw what I see. Do you see what I see? It's just like you can see it. But honestly, Eminem was just so fire. I thought they were so cool. And the rumor around that was, of course, Johnny Nitro and Melina were a thing until, Melina was messing around with, rumor has it, Batista, because Dave Batista was the player backstage, and that's what caused pretty much the rift between the two. But don't shoot the messenger. That's just what the rumor has it. Rumor, what did they say? It's just like, hey, it is what it is. So outside of all that, outside of the foolishness, Eddie, as I'm talking about before, is still slow, to come to the aid of Rey Mysterio. Hey man, you big and bad, you can handle this yourself. You can handle this yourself. So this is just weeks, of course, weeks after WrestleMania, which is just crazy in itself, because they won these tag titles in February. They fought in WrestleMania as tag titles 1v1, and now the rift is starting in May. You know, it's just like we only got a couple of months of Eddie and Rey as tag team champions, as a tag team in general. It's crazy itself. Look at that. That also caused the beef between Booker and Batista. But that's the thing. Booker handled that business. That's the thing, though. Booker handled that business. Rumor has it. Rumor has it. I'm not trying to look, don't sue me, Batista. That's just look. I'm just saying that's what the rumor has it. But yeah, Booker T handled that business. But I heard Booker T hit him with a Popeye special there. So, and honestly, but T, and you got it's the locker room. You know, it's the locker room. You gotta take the good with the bad. You know, in the locker room. That's what Roy and Tammy Sitch, honestly, and Chris Candido. If you listen to Jim Cornette, they were just amazing. You know, bright-eyed, just innocent individuals, just looking to learn and grow into the wrestling industry until it pretty much ate them alive. Pills, drugs, you know, cheating, scandals. You know, it's just, hey, it's a dirty game. It's a dirty game in here. So huge shout out to Batista, but a huge shout out to Booker T. Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah, man. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get serious now. I got work in the morning. I gotta stop playing around. But outside of that, Rey Mysterio, I feel like he saw the writing on the wall, and of course, it took until May 5th, 2005. Of course, Mysterio was blindsided by Eminem and Chavo Guerrero himself because he was planting seeds into this as well. Eddie rushed to the ring, coming to the aid of Rey Mysterio, and this just ate me alive. This ate me alive because Eddie Guerrero just picks up Rey. He's holding him by his mask, hits him with a clothesline, and that was just the gut punch that 8-year-old Isaiah Jackson Jr. needed, you know, to just start my villain arc. Hold on, let me see. There's a certain image that I have burnt into my head. Rey Mysterio. Let me see. It's a certain image that I have in my head of Rey Mysterio after this beatdown that he took from Eddie Guerrero. That was just Eddie Guerrero. I have multiple pictures of this Eddie Guerrero Rey Mysterio heel turn, but I just thought of this picture here. Heel turn, steel steps. It's a picture of just Rey Mysterio looking like a freaking Family Guy character laid out on these freaking steps. And I just couldn't believe I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, you know, at that young of age. Where is it at? Hold on. No, I think I see. This isn't it. This is still the aftermath, but this was pretty much burnt in my what do we call this? What do we call this? Yes. Okay, copy and replace. Okay, yes, we can copy and replace it. I don't care. Copy and replace all this. Look at this. I think this picture in the left on the left side of the screen is what really did it for me. Rey Mysterio laid out, like I said, like a just laid. I forgot what wrestling game that is. I don't know if it was Here Comes the Pain. I don't know if it's Shut Your Mouth. I don't know if it's SmackDown versus Raw 2005, where they would just, after you just beat the brakes off of them, they just laid out. You know, it just looked like you could just draw the chalk on them. That's what Rey Mysterio looked like. His mask is just tore up. You know, Eddie Guerrero hits a brain buster on Rey Mysterio on the steel steps. He's just literally just sitting there stalling, just waiting for the impact. Boom! And Rey Mysterio, that was the last thing we saw, you know, from Eddie Guerrero for a little bit. And it was just absolutely gut punching. Oh my goodness. I'll never, ever, ever forget these two. These two images right here are burnt inside, just ingrained inside of my brain here. The first one, of course, being the actual heel turn from Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio just beaten to a bloody pulp, mask just absolutely tore up. Oh man, I gotta find the other picture of Rey Mysterio. It's a picture of him backstage. It's like his mask is just being held up by his neck in the grace of God. You know, it's just like it's pretty much being hung up by a thread. And of course, you see Eddie Guerrero afterwards. He's in the ring. It's dark. It's gloomy. and he's talking to the Rey Mysterio mask. And I waited so long. I waited so long to get this response, to hear why the hell he did this. And of course he gets to the ring. A lot of people have been telling me or been asking me, why, Eddie, why? And the number one thing that also struck a nerve, struck a chord, it gives you chills, to this very day, is him just talking to the mask himself. It's just like, why'd you make me do it, Rey? Why'd you make me do it? I didn't want to do it. ¿Por qué, Rey? ¿Por qué? I was just like, oh my God. And he's like shaking. His head is just like, it's like his head's about to explode. He has veins popping out of his head. And you're just like, this dude's a nut job. He's going to kill somebody. Help! Somebody help this man. Rey Mysterio's going to die if he didn't already. It's just like, Jesus Christ. And I'm taking you back to how I'm feeling as a 7-8-year-old. My reactions right now, of course, is just being over dramatized because, like I said, I'm going back to how I was feeling as a little kid. I was freaking the hell out. I thought Rey Mysterio was done for. He was my hero. Of course, there was John Cena who was coming through saving the day, who did save the day from us from JBL, of course, around this time. But still, this is Rey Mysterio. Booyaka, booyaka. This is still the GOAT, Rey Mysterio, the legend himself. And then, of course, Eddie Guerrero goes on to continue to talk about this secret that he has on Rey Mysterio. Hey, I know something about you. We've been keeping it a secret. Don't let me spill it. Don't let me say nothing. I got it. Don't let me say nothing. And of course, they continue on to have a match as well, which is also the crazy. They have a match to pretty much go back and forth to say the match was pretty much if Rey Mysterio won, Eddie Guerrero didn't or couldn't disclose the secret that he had on Rey Mysterio, which I thought was just a stupid stipulation. Stupid stipulation. And of course, the 2 men at Judgment Day later on that month, Rey Mysterio won that match. Of course, it was by DQ. Eddie Guerrero used a steel chair to assault the hell out of him, beat the brakes out of him. And then it was June where it got absolutely personal. Eddie Guerrero was just like, hey, I know I told you that if I lost, that I wouldn't spill the secret that we have together. But I lied. It's like, but I lied. The classic, but I lied by Eddie Guerrero. And of course, Eddie is continuing to pretty much share that, hey, I split, from my wife. After I was drunk and going through my, demons, me and my wife split, and I had a baby out of wedlock, which I do think out of kayfabe, is actually true. I do think Eddie Guerrero had a baby, on Vicky Guerrero, not with, of course, with Vicky Guerrero, but he had a baby on Vicky Guerrero in real life. But of course, they put in the storyline. It just wasn't Dominic Mysterio in real life, but in storyline, they're making it seem like it's actually Dominic Mysterio. And you see Eddie and Dominic, little dirty Dom, little dirty, devious, demonic, live kissing Dom, just at the park, living his best life with Eddie Guerrero. And it's just so creepy because he's like, hey, you like candy? Hey, if you stick with Eddie, he'll make sure you're taken care of. He'll give you anything you want. And this is like, whoa, brother. Just like, what's happening there, brother? Like, you need to hold off on there. He's hugging him. But then, he's like looking at the camera. It's just like, brother, you gotta, hey, yo, it's like, relax, time out. We need a safe word here. But also, going back to I believe it was the A&E special, Dominic Mysterio came out and said that Eddie Guerrero was so gentle with him. Like, Dominic Mysterio didn't even have to pretty much go through the WWE staff, didn't have to really communicate with the staff. He was just going through Eddie. Eddie made sure that Dominic Mysterio was okay during those scenes. Are you okay? Do you need a break? Hey, is there anything you can do? It's just like, I think that's just genuinely sweet. And that's just also showing not only the brotherhood between Eddie and Rey, but of course showing that, that real life nephew uncle relationship, between Eddie Guerrero and Dominic Mysterio, which I thought was just so cool. Of course, uh, and I'm getting my days wrong. Eddie Guerrero fought Rey Mysterio at Judgment Day because Eddie Guerrero beat the brakes off of Rey Mysterio, of course, which led to Rey Mysterio trying to get his get back at Judgment Day. Eddie Guerrero loses by DQ because he smacks him with a steel chair. It's the Great American Bash where they fight. And if Rey Mysterio wins, he gets to hold on to that secret, and Eddie Guerrero doesn't get to spill the beans on the secret that he has. But of course, Rey Mysterio wins, stays undefeated, and that's the biggest story here. I'm sorry to go 40 minutes in to give you the biggest story in this whole thing, but Eddie Guerrero just couldn't beat Rey Mysterio. Eddie Guerrero just couldn't find any answer to Rey Mysterio. From 1997 to 2005, Rey Mysterio just kept getting the best of Eddie Guerrero, and Eddie Guerrero just couldn't it just kept bugging that, which is why, as I mentioned before, he just had that twitch, like this dude just keep getting better than me. Like I just can't beat this dude. He beat me by DQ last time, but it's just like, and yet, just like in the Great American Bash, as history repeats itself, Rey Mysterio goes on and gets the win over Eddie Guerrero. And that match, of course, I do think was I want to say the least. Oh no, I would say the Judgment Day match was the least, spectacular out of the I want to say the 5 or 6 matches, 6, 7 matches that they had in WWE and WCW. But even then, I do think that all of this being tied into SummerSlam was just so cool. Rey Mysterio being sentimental, after the Great American Bash match, of course, being really, really relieved at the fact that Eddie Guerrero isn't going to lose out on the secret being let out to the world. That as soon as Eddie drops his secret out, you have Dominic Mysterio turning around, looking at his father. Dad, is it true? Dad, is it true? Is it really true? And Rey Mysterio's just like on his knees, like, son, I'm sorry. Like, son, I'm sorry. Like, booyaka. Just like, I don't know what to tell you, son. And another conspiracy. Ever since that day, ever since Rey Mysterio had to look in his son's eyes and apologize after Dominic Mysterio, Daddy, is it true? After he bolted away from his father, he realized his father was a deadbeat dad. Boom. Boom. Long-term storytelling right there. He knew from the get-go, my father is a deadbeat, and I'm going to do something about this once Rhea Ripley choked me out with her legs. They're like, once this is all said and done, we're going to figure this whole thing out. That's what we're going to get into. But outside of the foolishness, that's when the I'm Your Poppy shirts come out. Everybody had one. If you didn't, you were a loser. Everybody, if your household didn't have a I'm Your Poppy shirt, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. That was just like having that little cartoon. You ever had the cartoon gangster imagery shirts? SpongeBob with the chains on. It was just a time. It was just a time. Around there. So of course, Vicky Guerrero is now getting to the fray because she's just like, I don't want you ruining this man's life. And Eddie Guerrero is just like, hey man, you stay out of this. Mind your business. Get out of mine. It's like, live your best life over there. But Vicky Guerrero was totally on the side of the Mysterios. Rey just really don't want to lose his son. So they have a ladder match for the custody of Dominic Mysterio, which in actuality is absolutely insane. 9-year-old Isaiah was freaking out because I'm like, bro, imagine you wake up, you're like with your dad is Rey Mysterio, you're jumping underneath the stage, you're living your best life, and now you're in a car with hydraulics, lying, cheating, and stealing, like living your best life, like trying to live your best life. But this is when Eddie Guerrero was losing his mind. Like Eddie Guerrero had some screws loose, around this time, which made him so fun to watch, which is why Dominic Mysterio going to Eddie Guerrero around this time, but just wasn't needed. You just didn't want to see that happen. And you just didn't want to see that happen at all. Excuse me. So it was cool to see the fact that Eddie Guerrero kind of played the heel of like just a psychotic when Dominic Mysterio gets in the ring, Eddie Guerrero's reaching for the contract. Dominic Mysterio's trying to shake it. Rey Mysterio kind of give him shit for it too. You got to watch that. That was pretty hilarious. But Dominic Mysterio's trying to shake it, but he's barely moving his body. Eddie Guerrero comes down from the ladder and he's just like backing him up on the at the turnbuckle. Give me a hug. Give me a hug. Come here and give me a hug. Give your father a hug. And it's just like, bro, what? What? It's just like, what is going on here? Like, this is insane. And of course, one of the highlights of the match being one of the highlights being now that we know what happened, Eddie Guerrero has the briefcase, has the contract. Rey Mysterio removes the ladder because Vicky Guerrero is supposed to be there. Vicky Guerrero is supposed to be there to yank the ladder down, but she misses her cue. So Rey Mysterio just does it himself. He's grabbing Eddie by his legs. They just fall in the heat. They just completely fall in the heat. There was a lot of scary bumps. Go back and watch that match. The match is really, really scary to watch. The fact that both guys got out of there unscathed, thankfully, but the fact that they got out of there unscathed is just so unreal. But it was really, really brutal. But Eddie Guerrero falls in a heap next to Rey. They both are laid out, and just Eddie is just losing his mind because, like I said, Vicky Guerrero was supposed to knock him off the ladder. She doesn't show up. She missed her cue. So Eddie's on the ground. God damn it! Where the fuck is Vicky? Where the fuck is Vicky? God damn it! God damn it! It's just like, man, losing his mind. It was fun to watch. Look, I'm about to lose my voice, losing my mind. You know, trying to beat Eddie, but it was fun to watch. So fun to watch. Eddie was just so cinematic. You believed in everything that he said. And when Rey Mysterio won, he hugged his wife and his kid. You're seeing Vicky smile from afar. You're seeing Eddie pretty much having to lick his wounds in the ring. I was gonna say on the mat, but in the ring just sounds a little bit better. But it was so cool. Just so cool to watch that. But then we are not done here. You think if this is the final, you think this is pretty much the end of this whole thing at SummerSlam. No, although it's a happy ending for the Mysterio clan, it still isn't over for Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio. Because, of course, after Eddie Guerrero loses the ladder match to Rey Mysterio, it was just so cool to see that. Let me see. SummerSlam was I believe that was in August. Yeah, that SummerSlam was in August. So you go all the way back to September, when pretty much the next month, September 9th, that SmackDown. And I'll never forget being in the kitchen with my mom. She's cooking dinner, and we had that little small TV, that little box TV that you used to get with the little antennas up top. Yeah, we had that on top of the TV with our basic cable, and we was watching the steel cage match between Eddie and Rey. And I was just so floored because I'm like, Rey Mysterio is just going to continuously beat this dude down. Like, this feud is going to go on forever, and Eddie Guerrero just is never going to find an answer. This is just going to go on forever and ever. I didn't even have to rewatch this match to remember exactly how this ended, because I'll never forget Rey Mysterio was always having problems because he hit Eddie Guerrero with a Hurricane Rana off the top rope, and then he landed on his knee wrong. Just completely messed up his knee. So he tries to climb back up to escape again. Eddie Guerrero foils it, but Rey still kicks him out. So while Rey tries to do a crossbody, Eddie Guerrero just completely just yeets him Samoa Joe style. Just nope, I'm not catching you. No, thank you. And Rey just completely just flatlines onto the mat. He's pretty much freaking out, losing his mind. He's just grinding in pain, groveling. Eddie Guerrero just walks out the door. Man, brother, crip walking. Man, I'm out this, man. I'm gone. You know, husband's like, I don't need this. But before he could take that final step out, he was just like, no. Like, you could tell, like, no, I have to beat this man. Like, there's one way, you know, there's one thing to just escape the cage. In the words of Jesse Ventura, oh, so you're just going to walk out the door? You know, it's just like in an angry style, in angry fashion. Like, no, Eddie Guerrero has to beat this man. He's not going to let another day go by where he doesn't pin Rey Mysterio to the count of 3. And he does. He hits a 5-star frog splash, pins him for the win. And even after the match, he gets on top of him, kind of mounts him, and just kind of points at him like, yeah. Okay, maybe not like that. He probably does. I'm trying to, that kind of sounds worse. That kind of sounds a little bit like something else. But, excuse me. But outside of that, it was just so refreshing to see Eddie Guerrero get the win. As a kid, I was losing my mind. I was like, Eddie beat Rey. Like, this is the end. What is Eddie gonna do now? Like, what is Eddie gonna do now at this point in time? Like, is Rey gonna get back here? Like, what is gonna happen? So that happens, of course, in September, and it was just so crazy to see how all that unfolded. Now, as I mentioned before, Eddie Guerrero, of course, was going back and forth with Batista. He was making his way towards being best friends with Batista, then eventually going towards betraying him. And then, unfortunately, that was the conclusion of the feud with Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, that cage match, because Eddie goes on to, as I mentioned before, go back and forth with Batista. And then on November 13th, 2005, we all got the unfortunate news. I know I was coming fresh out of school. My friend, my brother and sister got out at like 2:30. I got out at like 3:30, and they're still in there. They're in the car, and they're like, "Hey, Eddie passed away." And I'm like, Eddie who? Like, Eddie who? And they're like, "No, Eddie's dead. Like, Eddie Guerrero passed." I'm like, Eddie Guerrero ain't passed. What are y'all talking about? Like, that don't even make sense. And like, I can't even think about it now. Like, you just imagine as a kid getting ready for Raw. And we've gone through this so many times, not even as a kid, but even now, and then just nowadays, seeing the in memory of Eddie Guerrero flash up. And not only that, seeing Vince McMahon being the only one in the ring, seeing a lot of people on stage, guys crying, fans losing their mind over the passing of Eddie Guerrero. It was a gut punch. I'll never forget Rey Mysterio's tribute. I'll never forget Chris Benoit's tribute, man. Like Chris Benoit's tribute was just I felt like we all, shared in this, but not trying to sympathize with a killer. Well, not trying to sympathize with a killer, but at that point in time, he wasn't a killer, and you could sympathize to where he was coming from at that time. Like, oh my goodness, if you haven't seen any of the tributes from Rey Mysterio, I think Rey Mysterio even took off his mask. Not like took off his mask like, "Hey Eddie," but he like kind of took it off and like rubbed his face. It was just, oh man, that was just a rough watch. I do remember a lot of the tributes. I forgot who Triple H was facing at that time, but Triple H, did a little shibby, got a crazy amount of boos. A lot of people had the Eddie Guerrero sleeves, on their shirt, on their arms as well. It was just a really, really great tribute show, during that time. And of course, we can't forget the amazing run Rey Mysterio goes on in 2006, winning the Royal Rumble at number 1 of all places, winning the triple threat match between Kurt Angle and Randy Orton at WrestleMania as well, winning the World Heavyweight Championship. And then, of course, and then everything else after that. It doesn't really do much after that. But just the amazing run that Rey Mysterio went on after that. Just dynamic. It's just dynamic. And then, of course, we got the Rey Mysterio Chavo Guerrero feud. I'm not going to say too much on that. I feel like I already said enough with the injury itself. I might just get to that on another video because I really, really want to get to that. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. That was the end of True Colors. I had a lot of fun going off and talking about this. I know I went on a couple of tangents. I know I pretty much lost my train of thought and was going back and forth. But a huge shout out to Getcho for being active in here, going back and forth with me. Appreciate you. I seen there was a couple people on here as well joining the stream. Even though you didn't text in, it didn't matter. Just the fact that we see the numbers going up and we seeing you just coming through and watching, it just means a lot to us. So we definitely appreciate you, and those that come through and hop on to watch as well. This is just something that we want to do here quick. We don't know what the next one is going to be. Devin actually had a great one that he pitched to us, but I'm not going to do one that he pitched to me without him on it. I'm not gonna be like, oh, Devin, thank you for that. I'm just gonna do it without you. Like, no, that's not gonna happen. Not gonna happen at all. So I'm either gonna wait for him for the next one that he suggested, or we're going to find another one, probably a continuation to the Rey Mysterio one, and we are going to get active on that as well. So 55 minutes in, a really, really fun stream. Huge shout out to Get Yo, like I said, really, really organic and fun podcast. So, and Circle of Debate too. Huge shout out to Circle of Debate. Got to show them a whole lot of love too. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.